Thanks everybody for actually joining us for on the Financial Grill. Yet again, another beautiful day in which we discuss financial stories, ideals, mindsets, and perspectives. And our the entire goal of this podcast is to really get you into the right space in which you are building wealth, building better families, and growing your to your absolute potential. I guess that's the best way to actually say it, right? And ultimately, we get on here. The three of us are first generation Haitian Americans from South Florida, but we actually moved all around the US. We've traveled the world. We've come with bearing a lot of our experiences, our ideas, our thought processes, and ways that to really kind of make you become a millionaire in your lifetime. And sometimes it's all three of us gathered together. Sometimes it's two of us. Sometimes there's solo episodes. There are guest episodes. It's a lot of good fun. Ultimately, we're having real conversations about money that doesn't really alarm you. I don't want you to get spooked out. It's not about all about the numbers, but it's all about the feelings and emotions that get you where you need to go. With that being said, this topic today is about atomic habits and really changing our perspective, ideas, and our and where we're gonna go. So, what you got, Lovely?
So I'm actually a big fan of James Clear. So the book is written by James Clear, not maybe written, it definitely is for sure written by James Clear. It's called Atomic Habits. I've actually read it once. I'm reading it into my vacation time. I'm supposed to be going to Virginia, so I'm going to read it into my vacation time because it changed the trajectory of how I perceive habits, identity, and all things, just pretty much getting better. So when it's like one of those books that I call a viral book because it's sold millions of copies, which for book writers is like a big deal. Like that's a big deal for you to sell. Even 100,000 copies of a book is a big deal, but James has pierced it. So he is a prolific writer. And I also subscribe to his newsletter. You can hear me fangirling right now. It's okay. Just let this, fast forward from this part. We're gonna connect this to you, but I recommend it. It's the first book I ever recommend in all my trainings that I do is Atomic Habits, because no matter how much I teach people, no matter how much I talk about business strategy, I know that if you are internally not identifying with what makes successful executive leadership, then you're not going to get results from the strategies that I'm providing. So I always recommend James Clear, and he has a newsletter that I read every other week. Whenever I go, I kind of do backlogs, and sometimes I'll forward it to you guys like, hey guys, this is what I read from James. But literally, it's really helpful because it's backed by science too. So it's not just theory, it's not just lofty, it's also backed by research. And I think that's what I love about reading it, because I'm a research girl at heart, that tiny changes, remarkable results. And so Lawrence is actually listening through it on Audible. Are you done, or are you halfway done? Where are you in your reading process?
I do not know. When you're on Audible, you just kind of listen. So I don't know how many
Okay.
chapters I'm in. I think I'm in chapter 10, but I'm not too sure exactly how long do I have to go. So I
Okay.
think that's the way. I don't necessarily do a lot of deep dive and research. And contrary to popular belief, I do not read enough. Like pretty much I don't really pick up a book. It's not my style. And I'm actually going to caveat this for a second, but ultimately I do have Audible through my credit card, so it's actually for free. And I'm a endeavor in 2022 to read or listen to, not read physically, but listen to 2 audiobooks per month, because that's like the free stuff you get. On top of that, I'll say this for people that aren't avid readers, because not everybody sits there curls up in a book. Because
Like
I'm not that, yeah, I'm not that kind of learner. Like I literally not. I realized that long ago in my life at the very beginning when I was told to just go read a book in the corner. It just wasn't me. I'm a very kinetic learner. I'm visual, auditory at the same time. That's my maximum. That's like my prime understanding, right? So I watch people and I understand context. So even listening to I guess this book, Atomic Habits, it reminded me so much of all the concepts that ran through my mind for years. I've been trying to explain some of these concepts to my friends for years. There's even a diagram that I guess they provided as far as the notes of good choices versus bad choices. And I tried to explain that to one of my best friends years ago, the dichotomy of choices. The more and more you make good choices, the better choices present themselves. Whereas the worst choices that you make, it basically creates almost a downward spiral. And I try to explain that as a Venn diagram. Turns out they've already done that. The reason that I process information differently, I believe, because I am I think they call it high context
Yeah, we
person.
talked about that.
Yeah. And we'll dive into exactly what that means, but ultimately I do not need that much information for me to process it through and create a new pattern. So over my lifetime, I watched a lot of TLC when it was about the learning channel at that point. I watched a whole bunch of History Channel when it was way before the alien stuff and pawn brokers and truck icers, all that stuff, when it was actually about history. So I was able to pull together these ideas into something that makes a lot more sense. And I think that define the way I perceive exactly as James Clear is right, that your habits themselves are based on your identity. They're based on your own personal ethos. So for me, and this is a perfect example of it. There was a time I couldn't do enough pull-ups, especially in the Marine Corps. That's a big thing. That's part of our exercise. I could do enough, more than a lot of people. Like you could do 10, 12, whatever it was. Some people could barely do one. It was literally that crazy. But at one point I woke up and I told myself that I will do 20 every time. In that moment itself, and ever since then, while in the Marine Corps and even years afterwards, I did nothing but 20 every time I hit the bar. Like I just told myself this is what I'm capable of doing, and therefore this is what I will do. It wasn't until like later on, I would say even like 2 or 3 years ago, when I started almost doubting myself mentally that I couldn't do it, and therefore now I can't get on the bar and do 20. Like it's just something that you tell yourself in your head. When once you enact that protocol, it becomes you. Your identity is different. So it's not that all Marines are great at pull-ups. No, it's not that all Marines are great at anything. It's just on top of what we had to learn fundamentally on the basic level was that if you imbue your mind and your will on something, you can actually change your reality.
Right. And I think it's a powerful concept because we were talking in the group chat recently, and I told you guys about my 7-day only liquids, and I completed it. And it was for me a more so mental discipline thing. Because the moment I told myself that I'm going to do this, this is needed, everything opened the door for it to happen. And I was able to start it, finish it, and locked in, I'm completed. I did it. But before I would have been like, no, that's crazy. If I do that, I'm not gonna feel well. I won't even be able to work. And I gave myself all these different identities around it. And the minute I was like, no, I need to do this. This is who I am now. I'm a disciplined person. I'm gonna do this every year at minimum. And matter of fact, next year I'm gonna do 21 days. And I'm pretty sure that when the 21 days come around, it'll be the same thing because I've already had the ethos in my mind. I'm a disciplined person. I'm a person that the other day, I didn't think I was ever gonna say this out loud. I literally said, you know what? I'm gonna become an athlete. And it sounds like the most ridiculous thing right now, but I'm like, no, I want to be an athlete and not necessarily like go play sports, but I want to be athletic. So for me, it's one of the biggest things that I think is really, really important that we're talking about the ethos of identity because it formulates how you make decisions. It formulates how we are as people. And so we're going to talk about some of the theories that James has that he shared throughout the book that I think will be really good. And as well as how does it tie to your personal self? So I'll ask you a question, Lawrence. One of the biggest things that he talks about is building systems, that we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And I'm always asking you about this. And now I'm realizing what I'm asking you, do you have a financial system? I'm quantifying that question that I always ask you, like, how do you make these financial decisions, Lawrence? You hear me ask you maybe every couple of months, like, how are you doing this? And the question comes, did you start off with a financial system? Because I know you have the max now, but where did you start with your system? Did you start with your goal first, or did you start with a system of your financial change?
See, that's a brilliant question to ask. I think it's one of those questions that stumped me. I'm not one of those people you ask a great question and me not say that was a damn good question. I don't necessarily recall exactly when it happened, as much more as it was a will that I had in regards to it. Things that I've done in the past, for example, the Marine Corps, how I went through that, or even how I rode like a bike for 75 miles on the first kind of like try of doing like any bike ride or something like that. Why? Because I tell myself that I'm able to do it. I literally just, when my buddy says, oh, how can you do this? I'm like, I just told myself that I'm going to do it. So therefore I go perform it. I go enact it. I go do it. Even if I failed, like, what does it matter? If I've already made in my mind that I'm going to go try, why can I not just go shoot at it? Right. So
Right.
ultimately, when it comes to finances itself, it wasn't a system that I built as much more. It was an imperative that I put into my mind. It's almost like I took my subconscious, I dropped this one note in there. It says, this is very important to you now. You need to become financially literate, period. Why? Because I was making $23,000 before taxes. I was literally bringing in only $1,000 a month. I was literally at the end of my ropes. And if there's multiple people working in your head, like your subconscious, how they kind of process everything, one guy said, hey, in order for us to survive, we need to become financially literate and very quick. And this has to be very important to all of us. And as everybody nods their heads, like now it's important to my physical well-being, the way I eat, the way I dress, the way I kind of like exercise. Every facet of my personality has to understand that personal finances fits into here. One, because if I eat better, therefore maybe my grocery cost drops. If I work out more, maybe I spend less time watching TV, which means less time eating random snack food, which is less money all the way, all the way through. So everything about my actions became part of this system that I incorporated into my life. And ultimately, the genesis of everything else is to say, it's like, okay, now that I want to be financially literate, when did I see this example before? Like in my physical life. It's one thing to say, oh, well, Oprah has money. That's Oprah. I've never seen Oprah. I don't know Oprah. Like LeBron has money, or he did this. I don't know what. I've never seen LeBron. We don't have conversation. But I saw my grandmother who never made a lot of money. And in my own personal estimates, maybe she made as much as 15K a year, if not less, because she grew up in Haiti and everything like that. Like she just didn't have that much money, but she made things work, even though she had a lot of kids. Even to the day when she died, like the day she passed away, we were doing the funeral, people were lined up giving their condolences, crying. It was excessive to the point where I realized in that moment that she was a person that gave not just her time, her money, and her effort, but she gave it her all. So in my mind, I'm like, I want to be like that person, not exactly her. I want to understand, like, what does it take to give life your all? And because of it, I'm like, okay, if she was able to do that with 15, I could do that with 23 with no kids. Like with 23K, no kids, like I have no excuses. In my mind, I plastered it in my brain that it's possible. Therefore, all I have to do is now commit. So the idea of coming up with a system before you come up with the pathology is, I don't think it works that way. You can't get into the system first. You have to really say to yourself, it's going to work. What am I going to do? I'm going to make this work. I'm going to be financially literate. I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a entrepreneur. Once you make that as your first idea, then you settle out into the planning phase. So how do you be this thing, right? How do you enact pieces that could create a rotation, which ends up being your systems?
I think what's interesting is that you went back exactly to the genesis of the conversation, your identity, what you will be, who you are. I say that there's just something that I tell my friends all the time. You don't parent from who you want to be, you parent from who you are. So if you want to change how you parent, you have to change how you are. And that's who you are. And so it's interesting from that angle that that's actually not for only parenting, but that's for how you are in your finances. That's how you are in a relationship, your friendships. If you want to be a good friend, you have to first say that I am a good friend. I am a present friend. I'm a kind person. And in the language of your speech, that doesn't mean automatically, oh my gosh, I got all these great habits, but it starts to change ethos of things. And I think one of the biggest things that James mentions is that you start to have to, if you want to be, to shape your identity around your habits, you then need to start having the people around, like people that you can model those behaviors around, right? So if you say you want to be a good friend, but all your friends are douchebags, it's really hard for you to model a behavior that you're, like you said, I can't see what Oprah's doing with her money. I can't see what's LeBron, but wait, I had this great example in my grandmother that stuck with me, and I can visualize that because I was actually in there. And so that means that as we start to shift identities, there also has to come with the next E, which is the environment of the identity. But that's something that we've been talking about back and forth, is as a community, as a Black community, that our identity often doesn't follow that ethos of financial success, because we're too focused on looking successful in a way, right? I think that's what we've been talking about, and that the community needs, before we talk about systems and financial literacy, that there needs to be a shift in identity. Because if we don't identify ourselves as people that are financial literate, people that understand, people that want financial success, and we're not talking about just success, what the world has defined it as, but like we're truly seeking freedom from being unbankable. That's also another word that's also associated heavily with our community. We need to shift our identity. But we know that everybody can't shift their identity. We know that a whole community won't shift their identity overnight. What do we do with the listeners that say, hey, I realize that I kind of do fall into the identity of not wanting more for myself yet, not understanding what financial success can do for me? Where does somebody start if they want to start sending their identity after they've said, I want to be different? Where do you start after you say, I want to be different?
And what you're saying, that you're spot on yet again with the perspective that you're offering here. I think part of it is when people start saying stuff around you, that one, I forget what it was, like a joke, especially when you start saying the pronoun game, right? It's like they, them, like they are against us. Who is they? Start asking those questions: who, what, when, where, how, why. Those 5 W's, whatever you want to call it. The ideas need to start coming to your head. Like, who is they? Who? And you ask that person, who is they that you're referring to? Give him a name. Establish a person. Establish a thing. Because at the very least, we need to know what that thing is, instead of it just to be this generic thing that exists out there. It's super nebulous. You need to define your life and how it works. In our community, I've always heard stuff, or I've listened to people say that, well, we're not good at math. Like, who told you this? Why would you not be good at math? Like, I'm not gonna say.
People are saying this?
Yeah, people say that to teachers, like, oh, black boys are not good at math. Black girls are not good. Why would you say this? Why would you even be like, where is the empirical data to prove this, right? The idea that we're not good at it. Maybe somebody didn't learn it. Maybe somebody doesn't know what it is, but to say that you inherently don't know math, it's just kind of like everybody knows math to a certain
extent.
Point. Yeah, like, or some people says, well, they never taught us personal finance. I'm like, yeah, they didn't give you the actual class. Like, we didn't have home ec or something like that, but you can learn how to cook. You didn't have, like, all these little things are around you. The ideals and the concepts were introduced to you in a way that if you pulled it together, you'd find that's what personal finance is. Personal finance is merely arithmetic and critical thinking. That's all it is. And you learn those things. Arithmetic is like 3rd grade math. You've learned that all the way to 12th year and even the first 2 years of college, where they teach you math all over again. You've learned this. On top of that, critical thinking is really just English and the fundamentals of science. That's all you do. You're organizing knowledge. That's what that is. That is critical thinking. That is logic. That's the game that we need to play. But as you stated, part of the ethos that we've developed, at least some people in the community has forced upon us, is the idea that those are not for us. Those, that's just you being smart. That's just you being, that's you being white, which is like the worst one ever. Like, because you're smart, therefore you are white. Makes no sense to me at all. But in truth, we've always been smart. And I look at people, like, I spent time in elementary schools, middle schools. Like, you go talk to kids, they are a bundle of pure joy, especially before 5th grade. Pure joy. They have no idea what the world is, and they are sponges. They are ready to learn. They want to know everything that you can give them, because that's just the way that they're processed. That's just the way their minds are. But then people add into their brains limitations, failings, failures. Oh, no. Math is not for you. No, maybe math was not for your grandmother. Maybe she didn't care for it. Maybe it's not for the parent. But you can't tell the kid that math is not for them, because they're a blank slate. If you told a kid that math was for them at like 3 years old, they'd believe that to the day they die. That's how much.
I used to tell myself all the time that I'm not a math person. I'm not a math person. I don't get it. And I didn't end up going to IB program in middle school because I kept saying that I wasn't a math person. So I never got the scores in math. I would get them in other subjects, but not math. I get to Miss Osprey, if you're listening, wherever you are, happen to come onto this.
Shout out to Miss Osprey. Shout out.
Yeah, teachers, man, you guys make a big impact. And she said to me, you know math, you're not applying yourself because you're already telling yourself you don't understand. And I got an 89 in her class. And somebody was like, it's not even an A. No. She gets C's, and I was barely past math. I got an 89. And the only reason why that last score, there was something that I kind of like mixed up. But I was so proud of that B+, because that went on to teach me that I knew math. I just wasn't applying myself. And then when I took trig, I got an A. I got a high A. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, I know this stuff. And what was crazy is that when I got to college and I was contemplating what I should do, my advisor looked at all my scores and looked at all my scores in chemistry, and she's like, why are you not a math major? And I was just like, what? Like me be a math major? Like, even in that, when she told me that, I was like, what? You want me to major in math? She was like, yeah, everything in your transcript, every test score, every like chemistry class, all these things that I don't know why you're not a math major. And I think Miss Aubrey changed my mind about my capacity, that now I'm in college and my advisor, clearly I didn't end up majoring in math. But the point was, I went from someone that kept saying, I don't know how to do my math. My mom used to hate when I used to say that, because she's like, that's not true. Like, I don't understand how you're going to tell me that that's true. It's not true. And so for me, I realized that the identity that I forged myself caused me to have limitations. And I will never forget that advisor as well, because she told me, Lovely, if you don't accomplish anything in life, it's because you don't want to. And I was just like, I came out of that office like, not only does she want me to major in math, she's like telling me I need to apply myself more. She's like, you're that person, you have so much possibilities that the only way that you do not succeed is because you do not want to, and you have not put your mind to it yet. You will succeed. And that goes back to the whole identity conversation. We are telling our girls, and they do say that when they're in third grade, they start telling, especially Black girls, that to steer away from science, to steer away from math, to steer away from these things. And I am, by frank,
but
tired.
Who is they? But who is
they? No, I mean, our teachers. It's a lot of times.
But who majority of teachers are
Black
women. Black
women, yeah. Black women, yeah.
Black women. It's basically a reinforced trait in which that generation tells the next generation that they will not make it. Exactly. And it doesn't make any sense. It's like, if it didn't work out for you, that's fine. But do not tell a child that it's not going to work out for them. You don't know who they're going to be. You don't know their destiny. You don't know their true ideology. Yeah, maybe they're not. Maybe math is not their strong suit, but maybe they even work for the engineering company and they lead it. You know, they don't have to be the best in the math. They might just be the best leader of mathematicians. Exactly. It's almost like you don't want to close the path of identity to people. And I think that's what we suffer from in our a lot of Black and brown communities, is that people are telling each other the bad things that happen to them, to their kids.
Right.
And their kids gonna, I guess, get hit by different struggles, different challenges. But ultimately, your kid is a better version of you. That means they might even overcome things way quicker than you are. And one of the perfect example of that was anime. I know if the anime people's like, yeah, he shot his anime, Dragon Ball Z, where we find out that Goku's kids are way more proficient than he was at their age. Like, they surpass him. Why? You know, and that's one of those concepts that are built into anime or even other cultures, that your kid's generation will surpass you, and you should be okay with it. Some people literally stifle their own kids because of their own ego and their own pride.
A lot of things.
It's like, I don't want my kid to be smarter than me, so therefore subconsciously I'm gonna tell them they're not gonna make it. I'm gonna tell my kid, you know, that they're not gonna do this and that because they're gonna, quote unquote, be better than me at some point, and I don't want that to happen. And that's a problem in our community, where we should be striving for our kids to be the best version of ourselves, and even better, you know, three times better than that. We want
them to be, we want them to scale. But it goes back to, I was talking to my best friend this morning, early this morning, about how it's sad that you even see that in parents that did, like let's say they had a broken relationship, and now they have a daughter that's thriving with a man, that they become the protagonist in the story of those people's marriage. Like, no, missy babopu, like, but it's like, no, he's not the person that you created with. Like, that's your thing to carry. That's not for me to carry, because that person's not the same person. And you see that they start to play that role where they become a negative Nancy. And a lot of times, because what do we want to do is sometimes as daughters or sons, we want to please people. We want to please them, and like, I don't want my mom to be mad at me, but reality is mom does not see anything from the lens of positivity yet, because she still hasn't healed, and she's seeing it from the only negative light. And I've been lately, like, within my soul, talking about optimism in a different way. I found that I wake up and I'm like optimistic, and I'm not worried anymore as I used to be, because I realize that you have to face the problem. If I have a problem, the only way that it changes is me facing it. And so I've just been like, just face it, just do what you have to do. And if it doesn't work out, apologize, like, hey, I'm sorry, that didn't work out. Or, you know what, I could have done a better job. And I realized that something in me was changing deeply, because now I'm looking at it like, there's no way that I won't succeed. There's just no way. I don't know in what completely. I don't know how the picture comes out, but there's just no way, unless I'm dead and I can't try. So that's where my stopping point is. On my deathbed, I'll stop trying then. But every day I'm going to wake up and try. Every day I'm going to make up my errors and learn from them and grow. And I realized that, wow, the people that I grew up around didn't think that way. Like, I started thinking about how, like, my aunt talked about things, or how my mom talked about things. It was just like, there was always a gloom that came with it. But I saw the change of my mom after she had the stroke. Her language changed. She was just like, no, tout bagay possible. Everything is possible. You live, because had I not tried, I would have been sad. I would have been whatever. And so now she's realizing, looking back, how much effort she had made to be where she was. In the moment, it was like gloom and gloom and gloom. But she's like, no, I came on a board, didn't know English. I owned a business while here in America. I was able to do this. And it's like that gratitude started to pierce out. And I realized her angles changed, where she's always telling me, love, just keep trying. Love, keep going. It has the sun has to rise. Like, it can't stay dark all the time. And I realized that it took her being on her deathbed, essentially having only 2% chance to live, for her to change her identity and how she spoke. But then it gave me a comparison to how she used to speak before, whereas it's like, oh, life is hard. There's always these things happening, and I don't know how I'm going to do that. But it became like, how much I accomplished? Like, do I remember how far in Haiti, like, we're from like the outskirts of Haiti, like, people don't even know where Unswitch is. Like, if I say, people are like, well, huh? Like, where is that?
I
have
no idea what that is.
Right.
Like,
what?
From Haiti, I have no idea what that is.
Exactly. So for me, it's realizing, like, every day that my grandmother, when she was the one that raised me until I was 2, because my mom came to the States, that I am her, not, people say her wildest dreams. No, like, literally, when my mom was going, and my mom didn't tell her dad, she went, and it was like a lot of people died going to America during those seasons. Like, she went on a boat, and my grandmother told my mom, like, I'll look at, if anything happens for you, I'll always take care of Lovely. Be sure that she's going to be taken care of. This is a risk, but if this is what you want to do with your life, like, I'm getting emotional about it, because I never get to meet my grandmother, because she passes away when I'm 7. And she told my mom that, and that's what gave my mom the ability to take a risk. Had my mom not taken that risk, I wouldn't be where I am today. That was a risk that she took. She decided that she wasn't going to stay the same. And I saw my mom do things that you shouldn't be able to do with the limitations that she had. And it wasn't until later that she told me that when she used to go to, like, the schools, that she used to have problems passing tests. She would know the information, but she would sit at the test and everything would go blank. So the reason why she pushed us so hard in education is because she realized that I didn't have that issue. So she couldn't understand, like, Lovely, when you study, you're getting these grades. Like, but she never told me why, right? Until I'm older. And she's like, I pushed you and Vanessa and Wesley to do this because I had something that caused me inability to pass these tests. And that was the one thing that kept me from getting my nursing license, the real estate license. For some reason, this thing was there. But I noticed that in you guys were so smart. And so I wanted you to be better, to do better. And so that pushing that I used to be like, why is she so aggy, bro? Like, bro, it's a B. Like, I passed the class. Was that she realized that whatever she could, and I had to tell my mom now, older, recognizing you may not have that, like, intellectual side. My mom was very much a people person. She always had favor with people. And that's why she was able to get clients. And I said, well, God may not have gifted you in this particular way, but here was the favor. Here was your grace for your zone of genius that you perform really well in. And I realized, seeing all these things coming full circle for me, knowing that my mom left at a risk, knowing that my grandmother was willing to do whatever, because my grandfather was really mad at my mom, because it's like, now you have a kid and you're not even married, like, you're a failure. My grandmother stood in the gap and knowing that there was possibility, and she went to Port-au-Prince to drop me off without my dad knowing, without anybody knowing, when I was leaving Haiti. And she told my mom that she felt as if, my aunt tells me the story all the time, that there's greatness within this little girl. I don't know who she's called to be, but she's called to be somebody great. And whether or not she really believed that, or that was just, her way of, easing her, easing her soul, because she knew that there's a possibility she never saw me again. I realized the sacrifices that I'm standing on. And so for me, my identity of trying, when I say I want to create a company that has $100 million, and people look at me like, why? I'm like, because one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Gary Vee, just made that in a day. And to him, and after making it in a day, he says he's just getting started. So to me, it's not about the money, but it's about knowing that other people are looking behind us and wondering what's possible. And it's for us to say something different. So
there's a lot you just dropped on the audience. There's a lot of information, a lot of juice, a lot of quote unquote gems, bags, and
I don't know if it's gems, but
yeah,
I wanted to share that because I think we do need to change the way we see ourselves so that we can be bigger. There's
two things I want to say about that. One, your grandmother is a phenomenal woman. Your mom is a phenomenal woman, and you're a phenomenal woman. So it's interesting that I think your mom changed only through you, through your experiences, through watching you defy what she perceived to be reality. I think sometimes that's what happens with some parents, is that over time they learn through their kids how to be renewed again in life, right? The idea that some things, maybe I didn't get it, but my kid gets it, and they're gonna pass it over. That's why I think wealth or life itself is more of a relay race. Not everything is gonna work out in your life in such a way that it is perceived to be perfection. And sometimes that the imperfections, the mistakes, the problems are the exact reason why we end up being where we are. So ultimately, what didn't work out for your mom, and she had to leave and take this perilous journey to, be on the boat, get all the way to the US, define herself there, was because it didn't work out. Let's say, imagine when she was getting the good grades way back when she was in Haiti. She might still be in Haiti now, and you might still be in Haiti as well. So part of this story that happens to us is that we think it's going wrong, but in truth, the true goal in life and the unseen hand, right? James Clear talks about that, the environment changing the human behavior. The true aspect of it all is the fact that the stuff we don't know about, the mistakes that happen, also become part of the story that ends up making a change within you. So the things that happened to your grandmother that didn't happen for her happened for your mom. The things that didn't happen for your mom happens for you. So ultimately, everybody's pushing forward this big boulder that by ourselves we couldn't have done.
Nope.
Like we literally couldn't have done it. Like if it wasn't for my grandparents, I wouldn't be the person I am. And that's just period. It wouldn't be, the story wouldn't be the same. If it wasn't for my mom deciding to leave Haiti to go to the US, I don't know where I'd be. So all these little things that happen really define our environments, change who we are, and hopefully adds to our identity. And in some ways, based on the idea of atomic habits, it changes our behavior and therefore changes our habits, right? And by that definition, we're doing that 1% better with every generation. It's not to say that, every person is going to be a multi-millionaire and we're going to be balling out everybody's wearing all white on the yacht and yay. I hate that idea of wealth. I love the idea of wealth that's constructed within the fact that people try, that people make mistakes, make errors, but they ultimately learn to change by compounding what is good within them. One of those other metrics that is provided by this, like let me read through some of the main takeaways from the book. Small habits don't add up, they compound, which is very true, is exponential. The idea, stop trying to be a hero, which I hear that, especially for a lot of young Black men, is like, oh, I want to change my community. That are like, stop trying to be this thing. Just be this thing, right? Not trying it. Like, just go and do it. Go be an active part of reality and play your role. And notice that you've always been the hero that you're trying to be. Just be it. And that's a perfect example of what Star Wars is like. I forget, I'm gonna butcher what Yoda said, but the idea is that don't try, just be. Like it's like when you're trying to become this thing is a problem. Another thing that James Clear kind of drops here is the idea of the carpenter. I think that's not the carpenter, but the sculptor. That the sculptor was hitting this rock right for 100 times, and for the 101 time, it actually chipped. And one thing that was clear is that it wasn't the last time that it actually did it, but it's every other time before that that actually landed this one last time to chip. So it wasn't the last time that something worked, that it worked for you, but ultimately every effort that you put in from beginning to end is going to carve out a way for your life. So these ideals are there, they're fundamental. And I would even say, yeah, this is probably one so far, and it's not even the entire book. It's a fire book, fire perspective, fire understanding. And to your grandmother's point, everybody has a certain light within them. And no matter if you just say that to your grandkids because it's just something a grandparent says and kind of like, well, I'm gonna fade it to black by saying prophetic things and quotes and quotes. But some of these things really matter. My grandfather didn't really say a lot to a lot of people, or a lot of kids. Like, he really kind of was like mean-spirited to kids or something. At least that's what my cousin said. But my interaction with him was always pretty pleasant because I never expected much from him, right? It was almost like this guy shows up, he gives me a half-eaten bag of caramel that he probably got from the airport. Like, in retrospect, I'm pretty sure that's where he got it from. Like, he forgot to get me anything. He's like, this kid, hey, here's caramel. Like, he was eating. He gives me like a crossword puzzles that he sometimes started completing. So it wasn't like a gift. It was something that he did while he was on the flight. And he's like, hey, here, man, do you type of situation. But these little things to me mattered a lot. And one of the stuff that he told me, and I've said it before in conversation with other people, he says, little boys will fight because we don't have a concept of our words. As we grow, we fight a little less because we try to talk it out more, but we end up fighting anyways because we're little boys still. And ultimately, by the time you're like a young man, you talk more than you fight. And when you're an older man, you hope to never fight because it never ends well. So ultimately, it was almost like he shared with me the entirety of my life as it would be. The identity of being a man in society is like sometimes the little boy will always fight. It's just the way that little boys are constructed, or personality, or styles, or whatever. Our habits always come down to just fighting each other for dominance and perspective. But ultimately, you get to a point when you're older, as an older guy, that you don't really crave to fight. Because fighting at that point is damn near deadly. Like, if it gets to that point, it's completely bad. But ultimately, you crave the conversation because that's what changes you. That's what really kind of adds value to you. And that's why we're having these conversations on the Financial Griot. Obviously, shameless plug, because it's, in truth, the stories is what defines us and changes our character, our commitments to ourselves, our growth, our understanding, and our families. And if we're not building that, then we're just fighting amongst ourselves.
Right.
I know you got really emotional out here. You got emotional. You're still deep. You're still deep thinking about your grandmother out here.
Yeah. I haven't really deeply thought about her in a while. It's like, oh yeah, that pocket is in there somewhere in my heart. All these things are great. And I think that read the book, guys, or listen to the book on audible.com. Whatever path that you take, please do, because I think it's, I don't often say this about all books, but this is a pillar book that even in skimming through, it gets you to think through things that maybe that doesn't come naturally for you. A lot of the stuff for Lawrence is like a rebound, like, oh, I thought about these things, but for some people, they're not thinking in that way. When I read it, I was like, oh, this affirms so much in me from what I learned in sociology and what I'm experiencing. So you'll see thought processes that you're affirmed with and some things that you have not, like, oh, I don't know. One of the things I want to leave you guys with, this one quote that's here that I think is really good. It says, genes do not, and not genes like the ones you wear, like genetics, just to plug that in. Genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it. They tell us what to work on. And it's interesting how one of the things that we talk about a lot in our community is generational curses. And I don't like the term curses. I like the term patterns. That you might see a pattern in your family, and that pattern clarifies what you may want to work on for yourself. You might see that, oh, a lot of the men in our family are inclined to be alcoholic. It might be something that needs clarity, that I might not want to tap into drinking a lot because I see this particular trend, right? And this particular pattern, because patterns are things that we choose to do. These are things that are cyclical. And I think there's something to be said about watching your genetic form, watching the things. Like, some people are more predisposed to diabetes. And so it's there for you to, doesn't eliminate hard work because, oh, okay, I know who I am completely. I know what my DNA is saying, but it clarifies that, hey, I might not be the person that want to be eating bread, morning, noon, and night, because the carbohydrates are going to break down differently in my body. And it tells us they are identifying things. And I think what we need to see, if we see a trend in our family, is to identify the pattern and also the choices that went along with that pattern. Because I think when you say curses, it makes it so lofty, something so far away. It also makes, this may never change, when in reality, it's often patterns that we need to address and need to say, okay, this ends with me because I'm choosing to be different. I'm choosing to have a different angle. But literally get the book, read it for yourself, listen to it for yourself, get the cliff notes if you want. Google, James has a blog, if you're more a blog reader, get into it and see where you can apply this information, because I think it's great that you listen to us, but really the aha moments comes when you're actually doing. And that's also something that talked about in the book. You can plan and strategize, but if you're not on the field, like we talk about this on my financial career a lot. Like a lot of people talk about how they want to be millionaires and stuff like that, but then what are they even doing? Like a lot of people are going to walk into 2022 with big plans, but it's like doing the big plans is what makes the big plans, the doors start to open. The doors start to open because you're actually doing something. So that's my final thoughts. I'm locked up, done.
Yeah.
That's
Let me
it.
see. I'm gonna give everybody my final thoughts about it. One, I don't like performative wealth. The idea that you're gonna wear this certain amount of clothes or this type of clothes and be on the yacht and perform the idea of wealth. I'm more interested in the growth of people in the fundamental level, that they could change, they could see the change within them, and they could grow as people, and they could decide on their identity. Either it be, hey, if you've never tried hiking before, instead of it being like a white thing, maybe you want to just try it out, and maybe it might be your thing. Like, and you could, anything that you see, like cycling. I see a lot of people getting up on cycling now, and they're realizing that it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of people running, they're like, oh, this is kind of dope. Like, people are figuring themselves outside of the prescribed identity of being Black, right? And another one of those things that I've heard too much about, I even started asking people, where did they get that from? It's like, oh, Lawrence, you talk about, changing yourself, your habits, and developing into somebody. That's called bootstrapping. I'm like, what do you? I never said the term. I don't understand where you're getting this from. It's like, well, back in the day, they used to tell us they who, like, yet again, it's like, who is they? Every group of people, culture, ethnicity strives to do better. Why they don't call it bootstrapping? They just call it doing better. Like, that's about it. Nobody's out here trying to don't negatively prescribe a reality that everybody else is doing into your own subgroup only because you don't want to change. Because every group is really striving for that change. Every group is striving to create better habits for themselves, to establish better systems in which that they develop better families and build themselves up and upward. As they build themselves upward, they build their communities, they build their society, and they provide more to it. So instead of actually fighting, and creating negative terms like generational curses, I'm like, where are you getting this from? Like, everybody just said, like you said, it's just a pattern that's in your family. It's just something you can learn from, and you can say, you know what, maybe I don't want to be, eating chips and potatoes and see where this is gonna go, because I've seen it in my family, ends up being an obesity. Why not do something else? So ultimately, we do want to allow people the space to understand that your own internal mindset, your own internal way that you identify yourself really does change who you are. And exactly. I don't know who you're going to be. I don't know if you're going to be a rich person, poor person. I don't know if you're going to be like, a mountain climber hanging off the ledge with one hand, like, maybe that's who you are. Maybe that's the fun that you're going to have, the joy that you're going to bring into the world, risk or not risk. But we cannot pigeonhole our entire community to antiquated ideas and things that just don't work anymore. And if it doesn't work, we got to grow from it. And if you're not having those conversations with your family, and if they're in the negative ones, they're the one that refuse to change, maybe you change, and hopefully they see you changing, and that also gives them the extra fuel for them to change as well. With that being said, I think that's my last piece of it. There's a lot. I'm pretty sure we're going to go back to Atomic Habits and have a full-on convo. And we're going to bring a couple other books that I'm going to listen to, not read. Like,
we could definitely talk. Let's speak this, and maybe even one day the financial griot can even have James here
oh,
himself.
of course, yeah.
Never
James
know.
gonna be on. You're like, he'll be like, hey, and hopefully for free. You know, like that's
Yeah.
why Jay's on, and we're having a whole full-on conversation. I think that's what it is. I'm gonna wish into the world. The place I want for Financial Grill to be ultimately is a space in which people could find the information, find their perspective, find their personal happiness and their growth, and in the space in which they could like, share, subscribe, and review.
Right.
You thought you was gonna get away from this one. You better review. like scared, like
The whole point is for you to review, okay?
yeah, review, all that stuff. But ultimately, for us to change, we're gonna have to pick this destiny. It cannot be something that's just ad hoc on the side and something that we don't, decide for ourselves. This is an opportunity to change ultimately, and reevaluate the kind of people we want to be. I'm a world traveler. That's who I am.
Say it again, Lawrence. Let them know.
I am a world traveler. When people say, hey, are you just trying to, be wealthy to retire early? I don't care about that. I care to travel the world. So by proxy, all I'm doing is creating all the systems and before to get to a point where all I do is travel and show you what the world really could be. And that's who I am. I'm not the money person. I say that it is. I say I'm the neighborhood finance guy because I teach financial literacy, but ultimately to the point and to the grand scheme of things where I want to be a world traveler. That's it. What do you want to be? What's your identity?
What's interesting is I want to travel the world, but I want to speak to the world in my traveling. And what I mean
way to copy me. Way to copy.
No, but I'll tell you why. Because everyone
just say you want to speak to the world. Don't say you want to travel the world. Just say you want to speak to the world.
I'm going to tell you why. Reason why I mentioned travel, because when I was growing up, I used to always want to be like when I was doing love and care. The whole idea, ethos of love and care, is that there would be a love and care on every continent. Like there would exist a love and care center on every single continent. And to get to know that, you need to know the pulse of the people. I've always been the people. So for me, I don't like getting on the plane to do it. I don't like that aspect. But once I get to the location, I'm like, yeah, bring me to the people, not the touristy people. No, the people, the village, the people that are not as, ritzy. I want to go to the places that people are still more native, okay?
No, I don't need the natives.
See?
I don't need that.
Lawrence is talking about traveling as, seeing all these places, but no one.
I want to see the culture. I ain't doing the native stuff. Yeah. I'm trying to get native. Like I don't know if you know what native means. That means
I do.
Squatting over whatever. Like you ain't doing all that. That's a lot of native.
I want to see the native people. I don't want to necessarily stay there all the whole trip. Like I want to get, hey, that was fun. See you guys tomorrow morning. I want to go.
I don't know if y'all want to be, listen to her and just say, "God, gonna go native," because God ain't real.
So I'm not talking about Lux traveling, but no, I really want to speak to the world in that sense and be all over the world and get the vibe of like, and I don't know, recently, like Singapore has been in my mouth so much often. So if anybody knows like an entrepreneurial speaking event that they need a young Black woman to speak at in Singapore, just throw my name into the hat, because I really do want to speak to the world because I love lifestyle design. I love talking about it. I love what it means for us as people, that there is something for me that wakes me up to know that you don't have to stay the same. Like you don't. And I think I say this to my friends all the time, but it brings a smile on my face. And even when I'm like really sad or not whatever, like I'll just wake up the next morning like, oh my God, it's a whole different day. And I always get excited. It's like a kid in the candy shop. Like you could be like, dang, love was sad yesterday. And then you talk to me in the morning, you'd be like, what's wrong with her? What is she on? I'm on the fact that you can change, like it's a possibility. The new day is here. Let's do something different. And so I want to speak to the world. And by speaking to the world, I know that I do have to get on these planes and I have to go through that process. But I do want to see, and I want to see the world. I want to see it from a different lens. And the reason why I do want to talk to different people that are more native is because I think sometimes because of where we come from and us, which is a bit different from like the undergo part, there's so much richness in those people that oftentimes, like when you get to port, you're kind of seeing a copy and paste version of what the world culture is. Whereas when you start going into more of the native locations of these places, you get to know a little bit more about the culture in a different aspect. Because
just don't drink the water. Just don't.
No, I'm not gonna drink the water. I'm not gonna drink the water.
Like,
I promise.
Bring water, because your body is not. It doesn't have the enzymes.
It don't.
You know, it could be a little different. You're out here. I'm a world traveler. I worldly know this stuff. Like, I know you don't. Y'all out here trying to do all the stuff. Like, y'all trying to look like Anthony Bourdain out here, taking a step back, taking a couple steps back. No, I want that life. Like,
yeah, I'm not gonna drink the water and stuff like that, but I do.
You don't want your body fighting you. I'm just saying, I'm gonna let you wrap up.
But yeah, so no, but that's in the way. So while I do love exploring, the ethos is to speak to more people and share the story of life design and using your gifts in the world to make the world a better place. That's literally what I want to do. And Singapore, holla at you, girl. I can't wait to have like the massive events that we want to have for like not only for entrepreneurs, but anyone that's like professional, they want to take themselves to the next level. But I see those being hosted all over the world. I see one in India. I see one in South Africa. Yeah.
If anything, I need to get up with my homegirl, like Caroline Roberts out here, because she be doing the writers retreats in different countries. Yeah, I'm looking at you. Yeah, you need this. Hey, my wedding was supposed to be a link up spot for a lot of different people. If y'all really talk, y'all could have.
I did talk to people, but people
saying, I know there's a lot going on. I know there's a lot going on, but everybody that was there was not there by mistake. So anybody I ever invite is to make sure that you guys link up, because you guys have a lot in common. Kind of like our friendships are extensions of ourselves. So every person is kind of like, should probably know each other. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, Caroline Roberts has created an entire brand where she has her own book publishing company.
Yes. I've seen your shirt.
It's a book. She's very much Christian-based book publishing. So she helped other people also publish their books. She's probably on her 7th book, and she actually just did like a fasting one as well. For one, she did the entire David's fast. I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
Daniel fast. Daniel fast, and then it became so popular. But she also did her own like cooking book or recipe book as well. So I'm looking at everybody like, yo, y'all paying attention. She a phenomenal chick, man. She out here doing her thing.
I need to reach out to her to get different perspective. But yeah, for sure, that's what I really want to do. I see myself doing those things. And I need to actually put her down. If you ever listen to this, Caroline, we're going to need to put you down for like the next EPL Entrepreneurs Facebook Live. She would have been a good speaker. She has this very diverse background.
Amazing speaker as well. Like, she's probably, I always try to tell people, she's likely, ever since I ever met her, she was a full package. Full package meaning that she is extremely smart, not okay smart. She has a very high IQ. She downplays it. I don't think people know that, but she's up there. On top of it, she's gifted in pretty much everything that you could think about. She's great at public speaking, without any fear and nothing like that. She can sing as well. Yeah, it's a lot, man. Like, I'll be like, do y'all even notice who y'all around? Like, half the time, like, I'm a person that notices these key aspects, and I'd rather levitate people to the top, like let them know that, yo, these people exist. And she's found a calling on YouTube. She dropped a few things, and now she has, I think she's probably going to end up having 1 million followers on YouTube by next year if she doesn't have it already.
Come on, let's
like it's not easy. It's crazy, and it's part of what she did that was perfect, and it's part of this entire conversation that she defined her identity early. She knew what her identity was going to be. She wanted to be she loved God. She wanted to be in Christian ministry, but she also wanted to be diverse and nuanced enough to create new pathways that other people didn't think about. She's like the Uber of spreading the word, right?
That's actually a good method.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm looking at it now. Great stuff.
Like branding, all of that, this is all her. Like, she's a photographer, she does majority of her own photography and editing. So she does all of that. That's the girl, man. I'm like, yo, I've been looking at people like, y'all don't know, this is fire. So the idea that we exist in this world is one thing, but to understand our pieces, how we support each other, how we grow with each other really matters. And we're just happy that you are part of our listenership. We got into 1,500 downloads. Ever since I would say ever since we started in was it
September 1st?
Was it September? I thought it was October.
Yeah,
Okay,
September.
September. So we started in September. So it's actually growing fairly quickly. I think a lot of people are going to find the information. They're going to love it. We're getting a lot of great reviews on the side. We definitely would like it more into the actual review and comments, but we definitely settle for some stars. So hit up with the 5 stars. Let people know where they can find us, and definitely tune in. Every Monday we drop a new episode, and sometimes we drop bonus episodes on Thursday. So you're going to get a lot of great information. You're going to like great content, a lot of special guests. We're going to have real conversations, a lot of good fun times, and a lot of fun. So thanks again for listening to us, The Financial Griot. It's been myself, one of your hosts, Lawrence Delva Gonzalez, with lovely Meldelus, I always say in the Haitian Creole way. And also Alana Alcin, who is not with us right now because she's hanging out she's always dating. Let's be real. Like, I'm not gonna time stamp this. I'm pretty sure she's dating somebody right now, and that's just the way it's gonna be. Until she's gonna guess with somebody, and then she's gonna come back to the audience and she's gonna tell us the story. We're gonna probably find out next week. That
we'll find out. We'll let y'all know.
Yeah, she's in a new relationship, and we're gonna find out how she did it, and we're gonna get you more information on how you could actually date, like Alana, get a man in under like a month. Like, that's gonna be the book. How to get a man in under a month.
Alana's sold out. If you're listening to this, Alana, you better trademark this name, and get it together.
Then she's gonna get like the second edition, How to Lose a Man in Under a Month. Like, what? Hey, second edition.
You gotta have diversity, okay?
Second edition. We're just rolling with it.
But you guys, I hope, everyone, I hope you guys are, I said it twice again.
You know what? Why did I get hit and dinged by my wife? Like, oh, you guys say guys all the time. Like, it's not me, it's you. Like, it's been proven it's you. You're the problem. Hey, I took my diversity inclusion classes, all right? I got my certificate. I'm not quite sure about you.
I have not. We're going to work on that as a whole company. But everyone, I hope that you are having a great time and you had a great time listening, and subscribe, review, all that good stuff. We're going to end this because hopefully this episode gets to air, because I think we went over time. So we'll see.
Nah, we didn't go over time this time, but we can probably stop it right now.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the Financial Griot podcast, powered by the Wealth Builders Collective.